Even all
I
the
think
layers
The
that men were
layers.
wearing too is like crazy. Wasn't everyone just super hot all the time?
Yeah, no
You
air
know?
conditioning in your, well, at least they were
You'd
wearing
think,
like
yeah,
natural fibers.
That's true.
that's true.
They weren't like polyester dresses
Yeah.
and stuff that we would sweat through
But
today.
I do think that's a part of the world that we forget about and that's not talked about in time travel movies enough is that most of human history is just stinky. It just smells terrible. Like it's I can't imagine.
I mean, if time travel
Yeah.
existed, would you want to be trapped back at any other point in time besides now?
Well, and like
I
Uh,
don't. I
grooming,
don't
like body
think so.
hair and stuff like that, the way we address it today and how particular we are, with who has hair where or not is
Do you
like
guys
for
address
centuries.
any of the stinkiness in the script at all?
no, we do not.
You
And I
you do
do we?
say like the 2-day-old body cologne in the demo,
That's true.
Ah,
for
That's true. Bartender's pretty
or
stinky. He's been up
yeah.
for 2 days. Yeah,
that's amazing. All right. Well, I think
that's
that's a
that noir grit.
yeah.
That's the real.
Yeah, the
That's what you
world's
need.
real and dark and
People
dirty
smell
and
bad.
Stinky.
smell bad. Yeah, this is the dark fantasy people wanted after Game of Thrones. This is that's what we're giving them.
All right, well, let me kick us off. What's going on, guys? Thank you for everyone that's joining us. This week we have some special guests. We've got Justin and Tyler, who are two of our writers. We have had Tyler before, but this will be fun because I have actually never really talked to Justin before. So it'll be cool to see what he's done on the project and sort of what his history is getting into the industry and all of that kind of good stuff. And we can talk more about stinky people from the 1930s. So, yeah, the first thing I wanted to ask you guys, I was thinking about it before we hopped on. I think we should go around the room and talk about what do we think is our the most well written movie and the most well written video game, because I don't even
Wow.
really know what your guys like favorite games and movies are. It would be cool to hear that. So
So in general, or specific to like 1930s or
no,
20s?
in general, just like what do you, because we're going to be talking about narrative and writing, like what do you think is like a really well written movie and game?
Wow.
Who wants to start us off?
I was going to not volunteer. Uh,
So okay,
I guess
I
I
can
will.
go since I'm the one that like
Okay.
kind of thought
Yeah,
about it.
start
Yeah,
us
So
off.
you had time to think about this.
yeah, I'll give you guys some
Jeez.
time. So okay, one of them is like people are going to have very differing opinions about this, but the movie Watchmen, the Zack Snyder movie Watchmen, I thought it was incredible. Some people hate that movie, but I like that it feels like it's almost written like a comic book, like an opera almost. You're like watching a play unfold. Everything's so like dramatic. It's like even the way they're acting is like dramatized. So that's kind of like my side one. But in more recent years, I thought the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once is one of the most well written movies I've ever seen. If anyone recalls the scene where they're rocks, seeing that in the movie theater blew my freaking mind. So that's my movie one. And in terms of game, I mean, it's my favorite game of all time, but Final Fantasy VII, I think, is just a masterpiece. So yeah.
I
Who
mean,
wants
hard
to
to
go?
argue.
Who wants to go
Yeah.
I have
next?
not watched that.
Oh, really?
Um,
It's bizarre, but it's definitely worth the watch. It's like you can't even really have someone explain it to you. At the end of the day, it's a story about family, but it's got this really fantastical spin on everything, interdimensional spin.
It's very wacky. It's got a
Yeah.
great sense of humor and very, very fast and propulsive. I mean, it's a not multiple Oscar winner, so it's definitely recognized that even despite its weirdness, as a really impressive movie, and I totally agree. Yeah, I think it's great. I guess I'll go. I mean, this is the easiest and hardest question of all time.
Yeah.
Um, in terms of writing specifically, uh, I think there may be some. I won't say misconceptions, but people's understanding of what writing means in a video game context is usually informed by what they understand writing to be in other mediums. So they'll talk about things like The Last of Us,
Hmm.
which, fantastic games. Not my speed particularly, but I definitely understand why they're so critically lauded and appreciated. But to me, the writing in those games is very
It
it's
drives the
much more
plot.
like TV or film writing
Yeah.
than it is like game writing. And it's not to say that it doesn't have interesting mechanical interaction that ties in with the story, but um, I think that's why people are quick to recognize it because they see something they know that they're familiar with.
Hmm.
It's like this feels like prestige TV. This is cool, and it is. But for me, I think writing in games, like I'll give you an example of something that kind of threw me for a loop was the game Inside,
Mm.
um, made by the I think they're called Playdead. Is that right? The developers
Puzzle
of
one, right?
Limbo.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Sorry.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
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 the Limbo.
yeah. And what really impressed me about that, at the time that that game came out, I was just starting in writing games, and I was playing it and I was loving it, and I was several hours in before I realized that not a single word had been spoken.
Hmm.
And I
Totally without
I was
words.
already deep into this story of this little boy and this, dystopian world that he was a part of, and nobody had uttered a single word. It was an entirely wordless narrative, and I was so impressed by that, and also at the same time so threatened by the idea of as a young game writer to be like, do they even need me? Like, oh no, if they could do this well without writing a single word. But the truth is, I'm sure the folks at Playdead wrote many words, even if they didn't make it to the screen to the final product. Crafting a story of that sort of depth and nuance and being able to tell it in motion and in sound and in light is really impressive to me. So that when I think of storytelling in games, I try to think of instances like that that are really specific to our medium and
Mm.
what we do. Um, and sometimes they don't really involve things like a lot of dialogue, which thankfully our game does, which means Tyler and I can have fun writing fun dialogue. Um, but our medium is so unique, and that's part of why I love it so much.
It's awesome. That's a interesting. I actually still haven't played Inside. I played a bit of Limbo, but yeah, I actually have Inside sitting on my Switch, and I just haven't opened it yet. So maybe I
Definitely
will.
recommend it. It's a
Yeah,
really good
Yeah, check it
playthrough.
out.
I'll definitely play it. All right, Tyler, Josh, Cody, Gina, what do you guys think is good writing?
Oh man. Yeah, I can go next. So
And you can't say BioShock. No, you can't. Go for
no,
it.
no. Well, no, I think I mean I love the BioShock games, but I think the game that really stands out for me when it comes to writing uh is Hellblade 1,
Mm.
Senua's Sacrifice, because I think exactly what, follow up what Justin said on how writing in games is so much more than the spoken word, but it's about building building the narrative is building the environment, the actions within it, and then also from a gameplay standpoint of how is the player actually experiencing or playing out the story. And I think I was not intending to sit down and play that game all the way through. I just had a few hours, and then I ended up playing through the entirety of it, through the night. And maybe I was just exhausted, but by the end, I think the story was, making me tear up, making me cry because I think of how impactful how they told the story of what the main character was going through. And I think there's this distinction that it was pounded in my head growing up over and over again. It's one thing to, hear something. It's another thing to listen, right? And, when I think a lot of narrative in games, a lot of stories, just in general, just from any medium, we tend to just hear, see, uh, but then to kind of to listen, to understand, to kind of internalize any of that takes this, it takes a special type of story. And I think what that story did, for example, the one part that sticks out to me that I hopefully will remember forever is um how it conditions the player to be afraid of darkness because the main character is terrified of darkness, and the
Mhm.
feeling of being able to like go at the beginning of the game, you have that fear and it kind of just lets it sit there and grow, and it doesn't tell you necessarily to be afraid, but then there's a part towards the middle, towards the end of the story where uh you you defeat this creature, this thing of some sort, and suddenly the darkness isn't scary anymore. And I didn't realize until that point of how I was actually had internalized that fear of the darkness, even though the game was telling me you're fine,
Hmm.
or wasn't telling me to be scared. And the kind of the weirdness of having a emotional weight being lifted from you in the middle of the game. It just that type of writing, I think, is something that inspires me to look about how to actually interact with people playing the story and how they can feel things. And so that's what comes to mind as some just pure, truly exceptional writing. Um,
It's
I
a good
don't
one.
know how to, yeah, I don't know how to contend with
It's almost
best
like the
written movie or anything, but
it's like the writing itself, but it's like the directing of the writing plays a huge impact on it because they're saying the words, right? But it's like to get you to feel the feelings, especially in a video game. It's the words and also just like how you're the angles you're seeing things at, the lighting, just the way the
mhm,
characters like presenting themselves. And it's interesting too because games have such a long history. I brought up Final Fantasy VII. It's like they didn't have the tech to really relay that stuff, so they had to rely on the dialogue to kind of hit you in the feels because especially some of the scenes that are more dramatic, it's like you kind of look at them and if you had no context, you'd be like, this looks silly, but because you've been with these characters on their journey for so long, you start to build that like relationship with them. And then,
mhm,
Hellblade, it's like you feel like you're with her the whole game,
mhm,
like you're
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 literally
in
in her
that.
head.
Yeah.
You're
mhm.
hearing what she's hearing,
Are you just
whether or
one of the
not it's real.
voices?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know what I'm even really trying to say. It's just interesting how the I guess the technique of storytelling in games has evolved over time just based on the technology that we've had available to us and the different ways people have kind of evolved with the storytelling. One of the other games that comes to mind from this topic is God of War in the sense that they told that whole story without cutting the camera,
Hmm.
and that was wild to me, where it's like you literally don't ever like have a cut. It's like the camera will move to someone else but it like glides, it doesn't like stop. So
Hmm.
I've never seen
Video
anything
game
like that
version
before.
of a sequel take.
Yeah, 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 it's crazy. So yeah, Josh, Cody, you guys, what are you guys thinking?
Yeah, I'll go. I'll start with movie. Of course, I've had some time to like give it some serious thought as far as writing was concerned. And I think my answer would still be the same even if you asked me favorite movie. And I'd probably go Back to the Future,
Hmm.
one of my favorite movies. I think it's one of the most perfect time travel movies. Even outside of like the really dark ending when you really think about it, of how Marty disappeared from his original timeline, never to be seen again. Um, the just like how they tell that story, how they interweave out like future and past events, how the cyclical nature of the franchise as a whole kind of just endlessly repeating itself. But even within the first movie, um, is really really fascinating for me, and it's just something that like I remember watching the first Back to the Future when I was 3 or 4, and it like stuck with me like glue, and I would watch it kind of endlessly on loop. Um, well into like being a teenager and an adult. And I remember when my son turned 3 or 4, I think it was 3, maybe even 2. We watched with him fairly early. He absolutely adored Back to the Future. He was in a very similar boat to me, where he just like wanted to watch it like on loop a whole bunch. I remember getting him a kid's storybook adaptation of Back to the Future, which omits some necessary scenes. Um, but I remember like we got him the book and he loved the book, so we decided to watch the movie with him. And when he realized that we were watching Back to the Future and that he had a book, I remember him just like running to his room and grabbing the book and running back up to me and like jumping on my lap and like opening the book and like we're gonna follow the book in the movie. And that was super super adorable. So like I have a lot of
That's
like
sweet.
nostalgia memories for it. But even beyond that, I remember being in film school is one of those movies that we studied endlessly in terms of like its messaging and how it structures itself, pacing, all that kind of fun stuff, and how it's just, for me, it's just the quintessential, almost perfect movie. If I had to like send a movie out into space for someone to watch, to learn about Earth, I would. Back to the Future might be one of my top choices.
Nice.
I think that's a great call. Yeah. I mean, it's like Swiss watch movie magic. Just the kind of stuff we're lucky when we see it nowadays.
Would you send the whole trilogy up in space?
No, just Back to the Future one.
Long pause on that one.
Listen, and as an unrequited fan of 3, I love 3. I think 3 is underrated. I think 3 is the second best of the batch, and 2 is kind of the weak spot. Through 2, I think once they start, like, there's really cool stuff they do in 2 with like being double back in time and the whole thing with the sports almanac and stuff like that. My single biggest problem with 2 and 3, and why I wouldn't send 2 and 3 out there, is the inexplicable change to Marty as a character, where all of a sudden like you call him a chicken and it's like it triggers him. And nowhere in the first movie did we ever see any inclination that you could set him off quite like that. I mean, like, you could say like it builds off his dad's inexplicable fear of not being good enough, but we kind of already dealt with that in the first movie with him as well too. So yeah, it's just like some of the weird character changes, and then like introducing I think some of the characters in 2 and 3 to a degree haven't aged particularly well. I think they're products of the 80s more so than Doc Brown or Marty or any of the other characters. Like Needles and stuff like that. It hasn't aged particularly well. So I would probably limit it to
Flea's nuanced portrayal didn't age well. Is what you're saying?
No. You know what I would send up as like a sequel to Back to the Future, like watch Back to the Future, then watch another movie to keep it on like the Bob's and Zemeckis train. I would send up Forrest Gump with it. I think Forrest Gump was a more faithful sequel to Back to the Future than Back to the Future 2.
I haven't seen these movies
heard it
in
here
so
first,
long.
ladies and
I'm
gents.
missing the context.
I can imagine a very like old pulpy sci-fi where we send up Forrest Gump hoping to show, the humanity and the best parts of us, and they come back thinking the entire planet's like Vietnam, just covered in jungle. And this is
Shrimp,
very,
lots of shrimp.
a lot of shrimp.
Yeah, and as far as games are concerned, there's a lot of games that have kind of stuck with me with their writing. I gotta say, my like go-to, the one that always immediately pops into my head is the first Horizon game, Zero Dawn. I absolutely adore a lot for its world building, not necessarily like its actual like dialogue and writing, which I do think is strong, but the world building that they do in that game, and even into the second one, is super strong and kept me like hyper engaged in that world throughout it. Like you would see glimpses of the past, you would see glimpses of like why the world is the way it is now, and then you would just want to like follow those tunnels and follow those paths until like you got to their natural endpoint, and then would want to lead you on to the next. And I really like that. I thought most of the characters in the game were really engaging. I thought Aloy was pretty good. Some of the supporting characters are really strong. Silence, who was played by the late Lance Reddick, who I absolutely adore. And I'm really upset because I was this close to casting him in my last game that I worked on, and then unfortunately he passed away. So it was really unfortunate, and I'm just like upset that I never got the opportunity to work with him because I'm a fan of a lot of his work. Yeah, I think a lot of the character developments and world development of Horizon really sticks with me. And then from a player point of view, as someone who worked at BioWare, I love Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3 up until the last 15 minutes of Mass Effect 3. And then, no.
Nice.
How did you feel after the
thoughts on the end of
DLC?
Mass Effect 3.
When the DLC,
No, I made it worse.
It made it worse.
It
Interesting.
made it
Okay.
worse. I am firmly of the belief that Mass Effect 3 is stronger pre-extended cut.
Okay.
I think Mass Effect 3 is stronger when the indoctrination theory is something that is a credible belief as far as where that story was going. And the extended cut undoes the indoctrination theory. It exists. I am my tinfoil hat conspiracy theory, because I had left the company by the time ME3 had come out, and I wasn't directly on the project. I was on the Dragon Age team. Is that the extended cut exists purely to undo the indoctrination theory. Like, not only is it the giving closure and proper ending to all of the characters, which I think is good. I think the epilogues add a lot to the ending, and I think there's no problem with those, and I think those are great. The fact they added in the ability to shoot the Star Child in the face only exists to make it so that the indoctrination theory can't be true. It exists purely for that fact. There's no other reason they would have added that in.
I'm so
Specifically
lost.
calling it the Star Child just makes me laugh because I'm imagining.
That's what its name is. It's the Star Child. It's space. It's weird.
Is that what it's called?
7-year-old space Jesus.
I just, what Stanley Kubrick must think of us taking storytelling into the new generations of time. And we have a Star Child in our thing. You can shoot it in the face if you want.
You can shoot it in the face because you don't like the options that it gave you. No, so I love Mass Effect up until that point. I think I have problems with the pacing of 2, but I think it's overall storytelling. The job of the story that it's telling is really good. I love Mass Effect 1 is very straightforward in what the story it is trying to tell, but I think it does a really good job in it. And I think 3 does a fantastic job at culminating and bringing all of the plot threads from 1 and 2 together and closing them off until the last 15 minutes, until you go to the it starts with a C. I want to say it's not the Citadel because that's the space station you're on. Can't remember what it's
I don't
called.
remember.
The big thing that you spend the whole game making. Up until you get into that building, until you get to that thing when you leave London and you magically appear on the Citadel. I think it's a great game, and I think the endings in the original ending mesh really well into that, and I think the tease at the end of the destruction ending, if you got enough galactic points, where you get that little tease of Shepard being alive in London on the ground, leading into what was the indoctrination theory, I think is absolutely brilliant, and I think it was a really big squandered and missed opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when there's a story that runs for that long and that many years, it's it's got to be an impossible feat to come up with a conclusion that makes everyone happy. I mean, I know
Yeah, that's the difficulty, is concluding a good series.
Yeah.
I don't even have a problem with it being boiled down to 3 choices, because the technical nature of a branching storyline is extremely difficult, and to have the end game try to culminate all of those branching choices into some sort of tangible ending is really, really difficult. So the last part of the game just being synthesis, destruction, or integration, or whatever they call the blue one, I think it's fine. It's just I think it could have been presented better, not through almost any other form than this weird quasi guilt machine that was the 11-year-old kid who dies leaving Vancouver at the start of the game. I think if it had been a party member from Mass Effect 1 or 2, or even Anderson, who you just watched die, I think that would have been stronger. Yeah, there's just some there's a couple of choices in Mass Effect 3 at the start and at the end that kind of bring it down, but the whole rest of that game, all the stuff with the Krogan and Morden and Garrus and his people, and all the battles, and just the scale and the epicness of 3 really hit it out of the park. But yeah, just decided to miss the runway, dive straight into the ocean, dive to the bottom of the ocean, get crumpled by all the pressure, and never to be seen again.
Hear that, Casey Hudson? Cody's
He's
got
on
your
Star Wars
number.
now. And I think he had left before. No, he left. He left during Anthem.
Did he? Okay.
He was on. He was on Anthem by the time Mass Effect 3 was done. He was mostly on Anthem by that point.
I heard Anthem is finally shutting down its servers after like 7 years or whatever, which is
I love. I love the gameplay of Anthem. I think Anthem was really underrated. I think it got an unfair shake, but
yeah.
I think flying around as a javelin in Anthem was a lot of fun.
Josh, what are your top narrative games and movies?
It's kind of I was thinking of two as far as well, let's see, games. I'm probably just going off of most recently. I'm quite enamored with Kingdom Come Deliverance.
Okay.
I like games that fully allow myself to be immersed in that world. So just being able to explore the map, and then actually when I go to Europe later this year, I'm actually going to go to where Kingdom Come Deliverance is based,
cool.
just because I think it would just be super cool to walk around the places that I got chased after by bandits.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed the story of Kingdom Come Deliverance, and those are the kind of games where I'll lose track of time when I'm playing. Probably another one was Skyrim. Skyrim was my first RPG, like open world game that I ever played when I was younger. So Kingdom Come Deliverance definitely is scratching that itch. And then as far as TV or movie, I was thinking Shutter Island, but I'm gonna have to go with Adventure Time.
Adventure Time. I've never watched
Adventure Time. I'm a massive fan of it. I've seen it like 8 times. Like I think we got one of the little bees. Right?
Nice.
But it's just one of those shows where it's like I remember the first time I watched the first episode ever. I thought just it's a show. It's stupid. You got to be high or on something to actually appreciate the show. But then I watched it, and I'm just like, oh, this actually has a really interesting storyline, and you can see the character developments over many seasons. And yeah,
That's cool.
Watch overs later. I watch it like 2 times a year.
That's awesome. I got to check it out. That's another one someone, a bunch of people have recommended to me, and I just never hopped on it. So
It starts out really disorganized. Like it's kind of just, there's not really a central theme to anything except just like one shot, like stories for each of the episodes. But then it kind of starts going into this overarching storyline.
That's cool. I like when shows do
gets
that.
really complex.
Nice. Gary, since you're here, what do you think is the most well-written video game and most well-written movie to you?
I haven't played the most well-written video game yet,
Okay.
if I'm being honest.
Okay.
Gary's standards
That's a
are
good
high.
answer.
No. I just
It's Aether and Iron, right? That's the.
Of course.
well, I know Cody already mentioned Horizon Zero Dawn, but for me on my list of like all-time favorite games, that's like almost at the very top, just because it hits all the right buttons for me. Like freaking robot dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's the sweet spot, and nobody's really been able to hit it since, I don't think. But for movies, holy hell, that's complicated.
What's something that's up there for you? Oh yeah, the
Lego.
Lego tall neck is so sick.
Yep. It's
There-
dusty.
I'm kind of I don't have like just one favorite, but movies that kind of hit the spot for me were there was a movie that came out recently, The Creator.
That was fun. I like that one.
I love just like movies that are just
visual design of it.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I mean the story was like simple enough, but it was like just really beautifully done. I there are movies out there that I've watched. What did I watch? I watched The Irish. I like mobster movies and
Mm.
stuff like that. Like I watched The Irishman and I loved it. It was really long, but I thought it was fantastic. Like I like well-written movies like that,
Hmm.
but I need visual eye candy as well. So it's kind of it's hard because there's a lot of these really beautiful movies and the dialogue falls short, or it's vice versa.
Yeah.
So um yeah, I'm all over the map. Like one of my favorite sci-fi movies that came out within the last, I guess, 20 years is probably District 9.
Oh yeah.
Neil
That's
Blomkamp,
great.
he can't write very well, but man, he has some cool, like, just amazing sci-fi ideas and stuff. If you watch a lot of his like
Oh, did you see
his
Chappie?
short films and stuff. Yeah, I saw
Yes.
Chappie.
I loved that
I like
movie.
Chappie.
Yeah, I
No,
saw Jeffy.
Chappie was cool, but like again, I felt like dialogue wise, it was kind of
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
okay.
It's more
The
the plot.
story had a lot of plot points that were just like, huh, really?
Chappie was my introduction to what is it, Diantwood?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, mine
Oh dear.
too.
Oh boy.
Nice.
But my all-time favorite movie
Mhm.
is The Last Samurai.
Oh, it's a good movie.
I love that movie.
I haven't seen that
Like
in a long
every
time.
single time I watch that movie, I always end up in tears at the end. I'm just like, man, it just hits me in the right spot. So
Nice.
To this day, I still use that line, too many mind,
Too
when
many
I'm
minds. Yeah.
overthinking something. Too
Mhm.
many mind. Just
Whenever
I
I'm
use that in the
lying
writer's room. Uh-huh.
whenever I'm lying sick in bed and my wife is in the room, I'll be like, they're all perfect.
Nice.
I love Last Samurai too, but it's as soon as like someone pointed it out to me, I could never like let it go. And it's just Dances with Wolves or Pocahontas, but in Japan.
I haven't seen
Oh
Much like
yeah,
Avatar
no, it
is
is. It
Pocahontas
is.
and Dances with Wolves in space.
Yeah,
it's
it's
almost
not
like it's
a.
a universal
It's
story
it's a
that
Yeah.
classic
is retold throughout time.
Yeah,
It's
I love
almost
it.
like
Don't-
these are
don't
tropes
stop.
that we love.
Yeah, I was
Weird.
Like, don't stop it, but yeah.
I just really like the samurai. I love Bushido. I love all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, it spoke to
Have you
me. It
watched
was a good movie.
It came out as like grade 12. I remember seeing it in theaters and just like, yeah, absolutely loving it.
Blue-Eyed Samurai?
Yeah,
That's
I
the
have.
Netflix anime, right? Yeah.
I didn't like it as much. I there
Well,
was
compare.
Not
I mean,
enough Tom
Last
Cruise.
Samurai and Blue-Eyed Samurai is very different when it comes to the type of story that's being told.
yeah, no, there was just some things that were almost kind of unnecessary, like in Blue-Eyed Samurai. I honestly, the animation and like it was really cool. It was fun to watch. Yeah, I have a weird bar. My bar is all weird when it comes to samurai stuff. Yeah.
Nice.
Are there any other like really good like samurai or Japanese history movies?
I've been wanting to watch
recently been
Shogun.
playing
Yeah, I was just gonna say there
Memoirs
was
of
that
the
show.
Shogun's really good. Memoirs of a Geisha
Shogun
is
is a
really
great show.
good.
Shogun's
the
a
new
good
season
show.
of Shogun
Yeah.
come out.
Shogun
I don't
was
think it's
Disney
out
Plus,
season
like
one.
2 years ago.
I mean, if you're interested in like the history of Japanese cinema, that's a deep hole you can fall into. There's,
Oh, I know.
I mean,
I know.
incredible cinema coming out of Japan. The grandfather being Akira Kurosawa, right? So you could check out Seven Samurai or Yojimbo, or one of his movies was remade, I think last year, by Spike Lee.
Yep.
It's a movie called High and Low, which Spike Lee remade as Highest to Lowest with Denzel. High and
Josh and I
Low,
went to go see that.
it's
In
High and
theater.
Low is incredible. It's not what you think of when you think of an Akira Kurosawa movie, because you imagine like a period epic, the samurai and feudal Japan and all that. High and Low takes place in contemporaneously in like 1960s Japan, but it is incredible filmmaking. It's so exciting even by today's standards. So definitely check out some Kurosawa. Takashi Miike is another great Japanese director. He's all over the place in terms of quality. He's extremely prolific, but if you like really stylized, hyper exaggerated stuff that sort of inspires the likes of, our Quentin Tarantinos and our, takes stuff from video games and comic books and sort of a more modern, outsized kind of sensibility. Takashi Miike is really great. Um, the other Kurosawa, Kiyoshi Kurosawa, makes horrific horror movies. I would recommend Cure as a great starting point. It's not overly scary, but just the overall atmosphere and tension that he builds and the sort of sensitivity he has to his characters and stuff are really, really strong. I could go on and on. There's lots of stuff. Just DM me. I'll give you a list.
Nice. All right. Well, Justin, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you've done on Aether and Iron in terms of writing? Like, what have your responsibilities been? Like, we keep kind of memeing about how big the script is in terms of word count. It's like, what is it, 300 something thousand words?
380
right now.
now.
380,000
Yeah,
words.
that sounds right.
So, yeah.
19,000 lines, 280 words. Yeah.
Where do you fit in? Where do you fit in with all that?
Well, I joined in 2023.
Okay.
So the foundation had been laid by Tyler and Josh and Gary and the rest of the team in terms of the setting and many of the main characters and our overarching concept for the game. But we really needed to tie it together with a a plot and a supporting cast of characters. So that's I joined the project at the time when that was the sort of narrative goal. Um, so myself and one of our other writers, Domini, joined to help flesh it out in that sense, to help actually put like a beginning, middle, and end to the story of the game, to um, invest Gia, the main character, with an arc and a backstory and sort of an emotional journey to go over the course of the game. Um, so yeah, that
So was
I
there
came
was
on to
there
do that.
already any dialogue that had been written at that point and like implemented into the game, or was it still just like plot and like notes
Well,
and
I think there were early versions of things that had been prototyped and put together for sure.
Mhm.
The from what I remember, um, what exists in the current demo of the game shares a lot of DNA with that sort of early version of the story. We preserved as much of that as we could because it was great stuff. Do you want to talk more to that, Tyler? I don't really remember, to be honest.
Oh, yeah. I mean, goodness, it's a long history because I think the when you and Dominic came on, we were still trying to find our feet on what exactly the gameplay was looking like and how the story is supposed to interact with gameplay. Because there had been a lot of world building, a lot of concept work, um, and I think one of the first projects that you and Dominic worked on when he got here was essentially we built a prototype, right? And the uh, our Australian friends were trying to name the project after stuff in the Pacific Northwest. So we had it was called I think the Beaver Project, and then we had like a
Yeah,
Ladybug
beer.
Project or something.
Yeah.
And so yeah, but I think I mean like a lot of that was written in order to kind of proof of concept, and then yeah, we tried to keep a lot of that, but honestly, I think just based off of game iteration, we had to throw out, you know, several missions worth of material and be like, okay, now time to start fresh and new and actually get this thing rolling. But we tried a lot at that time. Um,
Hmm.
if we're talking about Justin here, I remember when him coming on and working on this, and I have to hand it to you. You're very patient with being like, oh hey, jump in, write a whole bunch of stuff, even though you're new here, and then a few months later, oh hey, we're throwing that all away and starting over again. And
Oh man.
you took it like a champ, and I'm glad you're still here.
That's I mean, that's part of the process, right? That's the job. It's all grist for the mill. We're as creatives, we're here to provide the raw clay and to, lump it together into shapes and forms that make sense. But sometimes you end up with, a form that isn't exactly what you're looking for, and you gotta punch it back down to its, messy shape and start from square one. That's okay. There's the stuff that ends up on the cutting room floor is really just fodder for what comes next. You can always reuse those ideas that you were so in love with, in different forms, in different places, in different projects. It never really goes to waste. So that's how I
Well,
like to think
and
about it.
uh, I can think of a handful of portions that we definitely used. There's a handful of characters that we'd love to bring back. Um, but yeah, I think it's a pool to draw from, and with we've written for this world, we've written quite a bit, and so there is a very nice, healthy reservoir of content that we can always pull from. But I think I know that it's quite cliche at this point of killing your darlings, but there's quite a graveyard that Aether and Iron is built on. Um,
So sinister.
Is that metaphorical and literal?
He's not wrong.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Our hands aren't red anymore. They've gone black with
Yeah,
the amount of blood on them.
the soot.
Yeah. Yes, we cremate the bodies. We ran out of room to bury them. We started cremating, and that's why we're covered in ash.
Oh my God! Stop this, man.
Anyway, okay.
Somebody
yeah.
stop.
He's
what I'm
writing Noir for too long.
They're writing as we speak. What I'm kind of curious about is the process you guys have used, because I'm coming more from the like art side, and while it's still really hard to kind of mimic someone else's style artistically, you have a visual that you're looking at. You can kind of see how they're using their paint strokes and like lining things, and the brushes, we share brushes to get a similar style and stuff like that. But in writing, like, how do you bring a bunch of people on and be like, okay, everyone needs to write the same way. This needs to feel like it's coming essentially from the same person. What do you guys do to kind of get that to mesh?
It's a really interesting question, and I think you kind of nailed it in the way you described collaborating with other artists, because it's exactly the same. When we draw from uh, reference or inspiration, we're synthesizing our understanding of what this vibe is that we're trying to achieve. So in our case, a lot of that is based on noir, right? So whether that's classic Hollywood noir film stuff, or like more pulpy fiction things like your Raymond Chandlers, your Dashiell Hammetts, those type of things. Um, it's about absorbing in the same way that you as an artist might look at something another artist has done and try and replicate it stylistically. We do the same thing with language. So we look at how language is used in classic noir stuff. We decide how much of that we want to crib from. We sort of we build glossaries of terms and words that we can draw from to sprinkle like seasoning over our storytelling if we want to. And then in terms of bringing it all together, that's one of the biggest challenges I think of any collaborative writing project or any collaborative creative project is how do you bring it together so it feels like a cohesive, intentional whole. And I mean, I don't know if there's an easy answer to that. The way I think we've approached it is uh, through as much intercommunication and collaboration as possible. It's the more we can read each other's work, the more we can leave comments and give feedback on each other's stuff, the more we can interact as a team and start to even unconsciously just pick up on what the other writers are doing and try and mimic that and learn where the boundaries are of where we want to play. The better it's going to be, or at least the more unified it's going to feel, I think.
And did you feel like that process was pretty smooth, especially since this is like a time period sort of world? It's not like you're writing for a medieval fantasy. I guess that's kind of the similar thing. But I feel like certain stories like have more of a, we were just talking about it, it's almost like generic kind of like TV show modern day sort of vibe. This is so specific. So did you feel like it was a smooth transition, and were there things that you specifically did to sort of prepare yourself for writing in this way?
Well, a lot of it was absorbing that material that we wanted to draw from. So it was going back and reading. Like I have a few collections of like Dashiell Hammett stories and Sam Spade stuff back
Cool.
there on my shelf, and immersing yourself in it, I think is the best way to make it come naturally.
Sure.
Because you don't know what it is that you're going to specifically latch onto, but when it's regurgitated, when it comes back out, you're going to find out what it was that you really connected with. I have to credit Tyler here with his dedication to and focus on real life history for this project was a huge boon to us, because having that as a starting point, a foundation, to be able to go into the real history of New York and dive into Wikipedia articles and research papers and books and whatever we could find to inform our understanding of what that place was like. Just inevitably, in the process of doing that, you stumble upon fascinating stories
Yeah.
of real life history of the way a city like New York develops. But that's all juice, baby. We can use all of
Yeah.
that. So yeah, that was my approach coming on, and in terms of it being a smooth transition, Tyler made it easy. He's a great lead. He's very welcoming and open, and gave us all the resources we need, and was also, I have to say, very open to being flexible about what the state of things were. Because, oh, hi Kiki, that's Kiki. This was a very well established setting when I arrived, and it's very easy for me to flip the table and come in with all of this raw material that Tyler had spent years developing and go, okay, this is good, this is bad, we don't need this, but this is cool, and maybe take this and change it to this. And talking about killing your darlings, like someone else coming in and killing your darlings is potentially even more painful. But Tyler was very, very gracious and very flexible with our suggestions on how to, reshape what he developed, and I think the result speaks for itself. I think the where Aether and Iron landed as a story is really, really cool.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm
just
Yeah, go ahead.
just real quick to throw praise back. I think on creating the cohesive world, the wrangling a team as large as we have in order to be consistent over 380,000 words has been very difficult, and I don't, we won't have succeeded for the entirety of it, I'm sure, just based off of that's a lot. But what made it easier and what made it something doable, that something we could strive for, is that I have a team of writers, Justin especially, that are extremely kind and collaborative and just generally good people, because they came in, took a look at the work, we talked about how we can hit the voice, and they're like, awesome, let's do it, let's figure it out, let's come together and make it happen. Because yeah, doing the noir voice, it's not easy. I remember us talking at the time of like, hey, uh we're not doing a fantasy game where we can be generic in how we talk, but we have to like put a serious amount of thought into each of the characters and how the narrator actually appears to the player. And that's a really high demand, especially from a team coming together, working for the first time together. And I'm like, hey, let's do something that's really hard. And they persevered through it. And I think they made it much stronger than what the initial vision even was in putting it all together. So at the end of the day, and I'll say this a million times in any question, is like it's the people you work with, and
Mm,
I've been blessed with an exceptional team. So yeah.
that's awesome. Um, and what, in terms of what prepared you before this? I know you've worked on some other really cool projects. What's kind of like your history? Like, how do you get into writing? Like, did you go to school for writing, or did you just kind of stumble into it? How did it happen?
Um, I always enjoyed writing as like a pastime.
Hmm.
And in university, I ended up with an English degree,
Hmm.
English language and literature. Um, and believe it or not, it's not the most bankable degree of all time. It was kind of tricky to translate that into a career of some kind. Um, but after I made the move to the beautiful city of Toronto, Ontario, um, I was exposed to a much larger sort of creative community than I'd had before, and I met some people who were working in the video game industry,
Mm.
specifically here at Ubisoft Toronto. Um, and they were kind enough, once I'd gotten to know them, to recommend me for a job at the ground floor. So I started in QA,
Okay.
in an entry level position on a little game you might have heard of called Assassin's Creed.
Nice.
Um,
The first one?
was AC Unity
Okay, Unity.
was
Okay.
was the one I started on.
Nice.
And to their credit, Ubisoft has really great programs for internal advancement,
Mm.
where lots of resources for you to be able to train yourself and pursue the roles that you're interested in, and mentor with people who do those roles. So I got to work with a really great writer and narrative designer named Josh Mohan, who took me under his wing for a game called Starlink,
Mm.
which was Ubisoft Toronto's sort of Hail Mary into the Toys to Life space.
Was that the one
And
that they did the like Star Fox
yes,
collab thing? Got it. Okay.
yes,
Okay.
yes. So the fact that I got to write lines spoken by the original voice actors of Star Fox
That's
and
sick.
collaborate directly with Nintendo was pretty cool. That was a
Yeah.
great, like, career milestone for me. But more than anything, it was just a tremendous learning experience in terms of what goes into the narrative of a game.
Mm.
The We were building a systemic dialogue system for that game, meaning I was with the other writers working on hundreds of thousands of variations of lines that would trigger so it didn't sound the same every single time you
Mm.
rolled up to an outpost or
I
something.
see.
And just the scope of it was bananas. And in comparison, a lot of projects that followed felt pretty, standard, felt a little more
Mm.
normal, a little more achievable as a writer. Um, but anyway, that's the path I took. I sort of came up from the inside. Um, and I think it was really valuable because it exposed me, like not actually starting in writing when I was in game development, meant that I was exposed to so many facets of development
Mm.
and what everyone on the team was responsible for doing, which is so useful as a developer, because you really understand the scope of what's coming together, and it
Mm.
helps you collaborate with people better because you get a sense for the intensity and the difficulty of the work that they're doing and the tremendous skill that they bring to their jobs. And it feels cool to be surrounded by experts
Hmm.
and incredibly talented people doing all the stuff that you could never do. um, or you could if you wanted to, but it's a cool feeling, and I think that contributes to sort of my corny but very very genuinely held belief that all video game developers are storytellers in one way or another.
Hmm.
Everything that we all put into the game is a way of investing the player's experience with some kind of narrative about what's happening, what they're doing, the fantasy that they're that they're embodying, um, and just the experience they're having. And like I was saying before, whether that's through words or not, it's something that everybody contributes to. So that's something I really love about being a game writer is the way that I get to work with other developers to get them excited about story so that
Hmm.
they can when they know what's going on, when they know what our goals are and who the characters are and the world that we're playing in, then they can bring their own ideas to the table. They can start generating their own cool stuff that I never would have thought of. And together we get to build this house one card at a time. So
Yeah.
it's pretty cool. I don't
That
know. I like it.
that is cool. And has your position shifted from being like were you I don't know, a dialogue writer before and then you became something else writer, or is it just like I guess what I'm asking is we were kind of talking about the difference between like writing a plot and writing actual like dialogue. Like, so how much of each of those types of things have you gotten to do in past experiences? It seems like now you're kind of, you guys are all sort of working collaboratively and like figuring out the story. You're working probably with chaos theory to figure out what's feasible. You're working with the artists in terms of the assets, and you kind of have your hand in everything. But in a bigger studio, were you more like specific in what your responsibilities are?
That's a good question. Yeah, often yes. On when I started out, I was starting in narrative design,
Okay.
but my what narrative design means
Hmm.
is different depending on what project you're on, depending on
Mm.
what company you're with, depending on who you're talking to. Um, it can involve lots of different types of story work. For me, it meant not only systemic design work, but also writing. So I was expected to help develop the story and characters and write their dialogue,
Mm.
and that sort of thing. Excuse you. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Um,
Have you ever had to go into the engine to
yeah,
do writing stuff as well? Okay.
quite often. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
As I've sort of tried to specialize more in pure writing as
Hmm.
opposed to the more design focused stuff. Um, I've moved a little bit away from that,
Hmm.
but that, like I said, that is where I started, and I think it's kind of essential for game writers
Mm.
because, as we've been talking about, it's such a unique discipline when it comes to writing. You kind of have to know how to develop story at a broad level, which is something I was doing at Ubisoft on things like Starlink. Um, you have to be able to invent characters and storylines and boil it down into individual quests or areas or chunks of story that you might be responsible for that you
Hmm.
have to build out and flesh out from the ground up, like I did in Far Cry 6, for example. Um, and then you might be doing what I'm doing here at Seismic Squirrel, which is literally everything.
Yeah.
Everything from like pie in the sky brainstorming story development. What could this story potentially be? What are our themes? What are we trying to say?
Mm.
All the way down to the UI text that
Mm.
appears when you get a new objective or something. Um, we touch every part of it basically. Um, did
And
that answer your question?
yeah, yeah, it did. It
I
did.
feel like I'm rambling.
No, no, no. It's interesting. I myself haven't worked at like a big AAA studio before, so I'm kind of curious, like what the difference is in terms of feeling between working at a studio and a big studio and working on something smaller where we all kind of have a little bit of input on how things go.
Hmm.
Yeah. Were you? I guess you were in the studio as well, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, prior to the pandemic, yeah, it was pretty interesting. That kind of doesn't exist
I know. I
anymore.
know. It's
Um,
big difference.
but it's an experience I enjoyed at the time and that had its pros and cons too. I don't miss how if one person got a cold, suddenly 400 people had a cold.
Mm.
That's no fun. Um, but, but it was cool to be able to collaborate with people in person. And that does make a difference in terms of that connection that I was talking about with regard to telling stories together, where when you can, sit down at someone's desk or go out to lunch with them or something, it's a different experience than talking to them over a screen.
Yeah.
It's not to say great games can't be made this way. I really enjoy working remotely, but it is,
There's kind of pros and cons to
yeah, it's a
each.
different
Yeah.
experience for sure. And yeah, the big AAA thing is quite a unique experience. I've always likened it to, it's like a bullet train
Mm.
that has already left the station by the time you get on it, and is rocketing towards its destination whether you are on the train or not. So you either keep up or perish. That's
Yeah.
that's a AAA experience.
Yeah.
Whereas for something like this at Seismic Squirrel, it's equally, fast paced, but it's all driven by us.
Mhm.
It's not the feeling that there's a big corporation that is, you know, shareholder value ahoy. It's
Everybody
it's
gets to
much
shovel
more
coal.
just a team of people who are working together to make something happen. That has its own stresses, obviously. It's no different in that regard. But it is it's unique as well, I guess.
Yeah. Do you kind of have a favorite aspect of writing? Like, do you like making characters, or I don't know, just writing dialogue in general, or do you like plot stuff or
That's a
everything?
great question. I can say pretty confidently plot stuff is among my least favorite.
Mm.
The mechanics of plot is an essential part of storytelling in terms of laying the track
Hmm.
for, it's the skeleton a story hangs on. Um, but to me, it's the least interesting part
Mm.
of a story. Uh, I'm much more invested in character,
Mm.
in humanity and emotion, and in, dramatic scenarios that writers come up with. Um, so with that in mind, I would say I think probably character voice is something that I've really found myself enjoying in my time as a game writer, developing how a character sounds when they
Mm.
speak, what makes their voice unique, getting to a place where they feel enough like a real person, where you instinctively know how they would respond to something, given any stimulus. That's always a really exciting place to get to, where they start to feel really three-dimensional. Um,
Yeah.
they pop off the page, and then of course you start involving actors who literally make them
Yeah.
three-dimensional, and then it's another whole exciting thing where you've got another collaborator bringing their own ideas and stuff to it that really makes it real in a way that it wasn't before.
Yeah, I was going to ask because I know that Dwayne is mostly in charge of kind of directing the voice actors. So when you guys hear these lines like out loud finally, are they the way you guys have envisioned them? Like, or is it sometimes like a good surprise, like, oh, I wasn't really expecting that, but it sounds awesome? Or is it just like, is it weird because for so long you've had it in your head and then you hear it and you're like, yeah, it's good, but that's not what I would, like how does it feel,
It is often an adjustment.
Okay.
You do have that period of where you switch over,
Yeah.
but it has very, very rarely, in my experience, been an unpleasant surprise to see
Mm.
how an actor has interpreted something. Um,
Does it make it
much,
easier,
much,
like once the voice has been locked down? Like once, like we had the voice actor for Gia, like writing any
yes,
additional lines for Gia.
that's actually a great point. Yes, that's true. Again, you're you're building up a character to the point where they feel like a person that
Hmm.
you know, who you can guess how they might react to something or how they might sound when they say something. But then once an actor actually comes in and invests it with their own take, now you have something tangible you can actually refer to in terms of, no, Gia wouldn't say it like that because we have it on tape. She says it like
Yeah, yeah.
this. So that's a great point. Yeah, that's very true.
And the same goes for the art. Most of the time, have you guys been designing or like writing out dialogue before you've gotten finished designs for a character, or did it just kind of depend on which character it was?
It always depends.
Okay.
Depending on the pipeline and the project, you never know which is chicken and egg, which is going to come first, you know? I think it's really fun in both cases where if as a writer I'm given some concept art for a character, it really gets my creative juices flowing on who they could be, what their story is, what the whole thing is about. And then vice versa, when we come up with like a character bio and we write out like the information about a character, seeing how an artist interprets that and brings that to life is so exciting. It's one of my favorite parts of game development.
That's cool.
Our artist Mika has done
Oh.
heroic work
She's
over the
insane.
course of
It's so good.
making this game. Truly insane, and I love her style, and I think she's so talented. And the like, you know, I originally pitched Nelly, so seeing Nelly come together not just in the like concept phase where you know Dwayne was helping direct what her costume would look like and what props she would have and that sort of thing, but from that to seeing her now in game in her different poses and stuff, and then with our actor investing her with so much personality and charm, it's just it's so exciting. It's so cool. Like
Who came up with the wowzers for Nelly as
I
a?
think that was probably me. Sorry.
Oh no, it's fine. We'll get a T-shirt with wowzers on it.
Oh, there we go. Perfect. Merchandising opportunity.
That's awesome. Nice. Cool. Well, I think I'm kind of out of questions. Does anyone else have anything they wanted to discuss or ask or anything?
I have a question for the writers. What's your favorite 1920s 30s word that's used in the game that you stumbled
Ooh,
upon?
that's real good. Um, hmm. I'm partial. I mean, like I said, we have literal lists. Like I could open up a document right now and find you a glossary that we've been using. Um, just off the top of my head, I really like some of the like Raymond Chandler like pulp slang, like calling a car a boiler.
That's
It's
weird.
so bizarre, but it's hop in the boiler,
Yeah.
now. That kind of thing is it's so evocative. It's so much of its time and place. And it's fun too because it reminds you that like we think of like internet slop speak as a unique phenomenon, but people were always goofing around and talking like idiots, you know. And the 20s and 30s were a time of incredible slang in that regard. Calling a woman a tomato? Like, okay, sure. It's bizarre, but I love it. It has so much strange character. What about you, Tyler?
Oh man, I don't know on favorite term. I think tell you what, the first thing that comes to mind is we're looking up slang, and one thing that came up, which I was surprised, was slang at the time that we now use. Everything's come full circle. Is sus as short for suspect.
There you
Um,
go.
and so there's a
Even
case
in
to
the
be
20s,
made
they
that
knew about a mogus.
you send Gen Alpha back in time 100 years and maybe they fit in, right? And things are fine. So that one just tickles me. Uh, oh, I can't remember. There was one word that was used a few months ago, and I remember commenting on the script, "Hey, can we hold on to this word and save it for something else too?" And I can't remember what it was, but now I'll stick with sus for now.
There's a great phrase. I don't know I don't know if it's actually drawn from real noir literature, but I remember it's this might just be an invention of the makers of this movie. I'm not sure, but in the movie Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, which is a great sort of modern noir, um, there's a character who really likes old pulpy like crime novels, and at one point she reads out a phrase from one of the books, and it has stuck with me ever since that movie came out. Of a perfect distillation of this style. Um, I'm gonna paraphrase and get it slightly wrong, but it's something like, she had poured herself into a sequin dress, and by the looks of things, she spilled some. It's like that. If we can get something that's that kind of florid and evocative and just a little bit risque, that's the edge we want to be walking for sure.
That's awesome.
The edge of a sharp knife with bare
Yeah,
feet.
it is. It is. You got to be careful.
Josh, do you have any other questions?
Uh, I'm sure we have many more questions for other AMAs, but
Okay.
I think good for now.
Okay. Cool. Well, this was a fun one. Thank you, Justin and Tyler, for hanging out with us today. And
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.
It's
Yeah.
super fun.
Yeah, this was a good one. So yeah, everyone watching, just know that we do these live in Discord if you want to come hang out in our Seismic Squirrel Discord. And we will be back again next week with another one. We will see you guys later. Thanks, everyone.
Cheers.
Ciao.
Bye.
Yep.
Bye.